are you with me with that Larsa Pippen? Okay, Marki, are we ready to get into it?
Yes.
They always say, oh, Larsa, she was, she was, kissing ass of the Kardashians, which, by the way, I loved Larsa from season 1, her season 1 on Miami. I actually didn't really follow her on the Kardashians. And so it's always that notion of like, oh, she's just a Kardashian has been or whatever. I'm like, I don't think Larsa carries herself that way. When you're friends with her, she loves you. I think if she moves on, she moves on. So the joke that I make, Marki, is Larsa didn't need the Kardashians needed Larsa. That's how much I like her. Yeah.
I love Larsa.
All right, we are back with another episode, Randomly with Ronnie Jr., along with somebody who I've had the pleasure to work with, take classes at her office. Marki Costello, hosting teacher, casting director. There's a lot of et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, you could give me your background, Marki, because you come from the business. You know what I mean? Both within casting, the granddaughter of Lou Costello, of Abbott and Costello. Was showbiz something you were always going to jump into, or did you kind of like say, I salivate to kind of do really well in the business? Or was there a time that you said, I don't even care about this stuff? Like, where were you at with it?
Well, a lot of people have to understand, my mother was Lou Costello's middle child. And, my mom died when I was 19. So I was very young. And my mom worked in Unscripted for years. There was a big company that did all of like the game shows back in the day called Mark Goodson, Bill Todman, Goodson Todman Productions. And she worked for them for years. And so I would be sitting in rehearsal halls with contestants for years when I was younger, when I would go visit her, or I needed the car or whatnot. So when she died so suddenly of a brain aneurysm, I had to start working literally a week later. And Chuck Barris was a friend of my mother's, and he said, come and meet with me. And so I went to the Sunset Gower Studios. I met with Chuck Barris, and he said, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, my mom died. I'm dropping out of college basically to start working. And he gave me a job. We worked a season of Dating Game, one day off, a season of Newlywed Game, one day off, and a season of Gong Show. And it was sort of, that was my entrance, my intro into the world of Unscripted and hosting. And then, 20 years later, building the first, Unscripted casting company. We cast The Bachelor, Temptation Island, before Unscripted was where it is now. And managing hosts before anybody like when I opened up my management company, big agents were like, you'll never survive just having hosts. Not only did I survive, but thrived and became the go-to. And then I would teach people how to be great hosts, how to be great in the unscripted world, how to be great just being you, right? And so I had my own TV show called The Drama Queen. I mean, I did lots of TV because so many times producers would say, Marki, you just do it. I'd be casting and I'd show someone how to do it, and a producer would say, you're just going to host it. I hosted a lot of stuff and did a lot of stuff. I just never pursued it because for me, I liked making money. I liked the security of making money. And, going from show to show or struggling, I wasn't into, but I could always do it all. I think that's what made me a great teacher as well. If I said to someone, stand up and read the prompter and do this, and if they looked at me and go, okay, I don't know how you do it, I could get up and do it. So, it's crazy where we are in reality now. I love it. Like my son, Lucas, my oldest son, who would have ever thought he's casting reality TV now? I would have never thunk it. But I guess it's just something you're sort of, you invest into, and you either swim,
I got two questions about credibility, I guess, like credibility or appreciation. Do you think enough people, like as we are now, all these years removed from, like, respect what your grandfather did with the Abbott and Costello comedy duo? That's one part of the question. And you personally in your business, do you think you get the respect? Because this is what I'm going to tell you. You were the very first person, because again, I have not only taken classes with you, and then I later worked in your office. So when I say I know Marki, I know how she moves, right? And I'm wondering if you feel that you have not got the respect of what you had done as far as creating talent to be hosts and go further in that world by identifying what their brand is. You were the very first person about 8 years, maybe even 9 years before every single person who was pursuing a thing, a cook, the legal eagle, whatever it was, that you have to have your brand. So I'm just wondering, credibility wise, do you feel like you haven't got your flowers? Do you feel like as time has went on, people don't respect, the Abbott and Costello duo of what they brought to the table? Where do you feel with some of those kinds of things?
It's interesting because I did a podcast yesterday and we talked about legacy, and we had this amazing conversation about everybody paves the way for the next person. And I think what's kind of lost on this young generation is not realizing everybody else who paved the way. It's interesting because especially I've put over 22,000 brands and people on platforms. I mean, I have people that come up to me that say, I hated your class because you would always tell us brand, and I didn't know what my brand was, but I got it 2 years later, and now I'm sitting here and making X amount of dollars. I think my gift and curse is I sort of see things trending before they happen. And, and so being able to say to someone like, look, I remember giving this girl this great brand of, hey, social media is colliding and doing like a countdown. And then, of course, 2 years later, everybody was doing that creative, or be a foodie. And, now so many people are foodies. And then even the where we've evolved with social media, I go to these businesses and I say to them, like, okay, perfect example. That sandwich shop that had the pickle, what's it called? That sandwich that everybody was eating, this pickled sandwich. And I go to get one, and the guy's like, yeah, we're out of pickles. I'm like, what do you mean you're out of pickles? You're doing this for 2 weeks, and how are you out of pickles? And the guy was like, well, our manager thought we'd only sell like 3 a day. And I go, well, your manager's a moron, because they're not factoring these businesses, the power of Instagram, and especially TikTok. People literally eat in their cars, and they're eating pickle witches. And if someone's scrolling, I'm like, ooh, that's good. And the way the algorithm works is if you watch a video for more than 20 seconds on a pickle gosh darn sandwich, they're going to keep putting them in your For You page, right?
Right.
So I tell people now that are like, I want to be a host, I want to have a TV show. I'm like, no, what you want to do is build your social platform, build your brand, and really pump out great content on social media, cross promote, get people to be guests on yours based on your creative and your brand with another person's creative and brand. And it will just skyrocket.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, in theory, right there, your credibility has been really strong. I mean, I remember early on, I think I got footage actually of this. Mariana Hewitt does such a wonderful job, but she was in your class. I had done green screen with her years ago. This was so early on. And so, Marki, though you are looked at as tough, and your name was the drama queen on the TV show. And by the way, later in this episode, I'm gonna tell you where you messed up on the drama queen. I'm gonna tell you, because I got to school you back, right? But it is the truth. It's like, that's the thing. And I think it's like with anything that you do, if you are willing to listen and sort of workshop these ideas that come into your universe, you have an opportunity to like swing the bat and really connect and hit that home run. But a lot of people, I do know, they would listen to you, but they would also have a heavy opinion. And I think it really sucked as time went by. Once everyone went direct to connect, type of social media or whatever, suddenly they didn't want to necessarily listen like they used to. So I just think that the principles that you taught way back in the day, they still stick around. And when you do a digital thing, a social media thing, you can cut corners, but the essence of a brand is always going to be specific, and it's worthy, and that's why I refer to your grandfather, Lou Costello. Like, that doesn't go away. That doesn't go away just because we're in a different era. Can you talk to me real quick about his era of comedy versus the era that is a little bit more faster consumption and maybe not even good consumption? It's not even good content sometimes, but that will still make you a success these days. In your grandfather's era, Lou Costello of Abbott and Costello, you actually had to be the best at your craft. Am I right?
Well, yeah, back in that time in the 40s, you know what I mean? And the 30s, 40s, and 50s, great teams. You had Laurel and Hardy, you had Abbott and Costello, you had Jerry and Dean, you know what I mean? You had this, you know, the Smucker brothers or Smother brothers, you know what I mean? You know, you had great duos because that was the branding of the day. You were in vaudeville and you had a straight man and you had a funny man. And, you know, if you were smart, you were able to parlay that into, like my grandfather did. You know, what a lot of people don't realize is Universal Studios, which today is the biggest entertainment conglomerate, NBC Universal, they were about to go bankrupt, Universal, and they signed Abbott and Costello, and they took them out of bankruptcy. And, you know, Abbott and Costello was such a massive, you know, a massive duo for them. They did 8 of their, you know, X amount of movies. And then my grandfather was always the funny man, but he was also very smart. So he one time was walking on Hollywood Boulevard and he saw these little, like, you know, films that they were releasing of their movies, like where you could, like the 9mm films like you would get at like the novelty shops on Hollywood Boulevard. He goes to his agent and his manager and he says, well, we're not getting paid for this. They were in the process of renegotiating their deal with Universal. And it's equivalent of what video on demand is, or what directed, you know, movie or DVDs are today that get negotiated in someone's contract. Streaming. My grandfather got points on the back end before anybody else. Once again, all of these people paved the way for where we are today. What I teach still to this day, and not to brag or whatever, but my business now, I mean, my office burned down right after COVID. ADT, the alarm company, put a new alarm pad on. I was then flying 2 days later to Atlanta to coach Kanye West chef for this big new Food Network show. And I get a call that there's a fire in my studio, which you've been in my studio a million times, my beautiful studio of 20 plus years. And I'm, you know, 2,600 miles away. And, you know, I came back and my studio was just basically had a wire fire behind the alarm pad that ADT that you paid to secure your business or home burned my business down. But my point to all of that is, you know, where I am today, because I think you always have to be evolving. Now, today, listen, when a big name wants hosting or media training, I'm on CAA, ICM, WMEs, I'm on all of their lists. And, you know, what I still teach to this day, which I think is invaluable and works on any medium, whether it's TV, film, social media, podcasts, is know your audience based on your brand. Who is your audience that you're going to be engaging, entertaining, enlightening, educating, right? And like for yours, right off the bat, okay, they've got to be reality, pop culture to consume this content, right? Yeah. So let's always put them first. What are they hearing now? What can we give them that's going to keep them engaged or entertained? Right. Now, what's interesting is we came out of the strikes. We had the actor strike and the writer strike. And a lot of big name actors started to do unscripted because that was one thing you could still do without crossing the picket line, because unscripted is a completely different genre than SAG. It's after and it's unscripted. You
had like a Terry Bradshaw did one. You even had
Anthony Anderson.
A lot of people,
Stacey Palmer. You have Niecy Nash. You have Rob Lowe. You have all of these huge names hosting, and they realized, wait a minute, I can still do my scripted show about the fire department in Austin. I can host the floor. You know what I mean? I can go and do a movie. And so what's happened in the host world, and even in the unscripted world, you can go do Love Island and come and you go into the island having 200 followers and you come out having 2 million if you know how to maneuver yourself right on camera. And so then you come out and you have 2 million followers, and then you do on Call Her Daddy podcast, and then you're on this, and then you're off to the races if you're smart. So I think in this day and age, it's all the guardrails are up, meaning there's no more bound. You can go in every lane now. There's no, you know, before it was like, I'm an actor, I don't want to host, you know, I'm a host, no one wants me to act. And now you can do it all.
I want to talk about the complexities of that works well for the people who are already up. What about your people who are still breaking in? What is your bit of advice for that? I mean, I look at myself as I do a really great job. I've been in radio for about 20 years. The resume speaks for itself, but it is sometimes challenging. And this is not an excuse thing. And I love to always bring you blunt, real stuff, because you could always give it to me nice and raw back. But what does that feel like when you have somebody who has the skill set to do it, but sometimes you are now competing with somebody like Rob Lowe, who I love on the TV show,
Right.
911 Lone Star. He's fantastic. What a great career. But I don't want to feel like I'm competing, but sometimes you worry that, you know, where do those dollars go for people that have really like laid into the work? Like, what is your thought process on that? Do you think it's a complaint? Like, do you think I'm being a little sensitive? What do you feel about that?
I feel that you have to, media is a current, it moves, right?
Mhm.
And if you don't move with where it's going, then you're
Mhm.
going to get left behind. You're going to drown. You're not going to, you know, thrive.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. I was coaching a girl the other day. She's got a nice following on social media. She's got some brand deals. She has a podcast. She has a deal with this other company to do stuff on their digital platform. But she's like, I just can't, you know, get past the finish line. And I
Mhm.
said, I looked at all of your stuff and I explained to her why. I said, because you are still holding yourself back. There is
Mm.
something that you're not doing, like meaning you get there, but then you pull back. You're almost too afraid of offending anybody. And
Yeah.
here's where we are. Listen when I tell this to all of your listeners. You've got to
Mhm.
push the envelope and you have to be unapologetically yourself. The minute you're not, the minute you're holding yourself back to be like, oh, I don't want to offend them, or I don't want to say
Mhm.
this, or don't, those days are over. You've got to be for what you stand for. And you've got to, like, you
Mhm.
can't be afraid to push that envelope. It's evolving.
You're right, and you got to adapt. You do have to adapt, which is going to bring me to my next person I want to talk about, because I know you both, you and myself, we and like lots of people love what she has done. That's Joan Rivers. We'll talk about her in a second.
Love
But you
Joan.
are right. I gotta say, and that's why, like, when I have a conversation with you, being that I worked for your office and took your class, I never have no qualms to be like, hey, I want to brainstorm this thing that's kind of throwing me in a lower energy, you know, and that is, you know, competing. But I found myself recently the other day saying, okay, it is what it is, but don't like go there, like mentally, you know what I mean? And I think I was watching the Netflix TV show with Kristen Bell and Adam Brody, and I didn't know that the Foster daughters were sort of behind that. And it first made, I'm just going to be honest with you, Marki, it first made me want to say, oh gosh, you know, a nepotism situation, that's hard to, you know, me coming from a blue collar family, that's hard to compete with.
Right.
And while that's true, and I feel that, I also learned, and this is just super recent, I also learned, step into what it is that you are. Randomly with Ronnie Jr., 20 years of this. Like, nobody's going to touch that ever. That is a credibility thing that, you know, like it or not, I've done it, right? And so it's just about, I guess what I'm trying to say is I have started to, and this is super recent, I've started to be like, no. Like, I literally will tell myself, wait a minute, don't go there. It sucks. I'm glad the Foster sisters were able to do something, but that ain't got nothing to do with me. And I think that's kind of what you're trying to showcase or tell me, is like, just adapt, just pivot, just keep going, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. Someone the other day put on some app that they needed a media coach, and all these people were like, call Marki Costello, call Marki Costello. And then other people were putting in other names. And it was funny. Like, the guy from the production company ended up calling me, and he was like, did you know any of the other names? And I said, I've never even heard of those people. I don't know like what they are. Like, I go, but once again, not my problem. Let me tell you what I do. And if you want to hire me based on that, or my alumni, or the people I've managed and guided to success, I think that speaks for itself, you know? And I think that's the same for talent. It's like, okay, what are you doing to push yourself to get, what is your end goal? If you want to be hosting the floor on Fox like Rob Lowe is, well, guess what? What are you doing? Are you out in New York City streets doing a game show, telling people, here's $50, here's $20, $5? You know, spend $200 a month and do a man on the street thing and put it on TikTok. Make your TikTok different than your Instagram. They're two different platforms. Too many people recycle their shit. No. I would love for you to do something that you're like, hey, we're going to go out and ask some pop culture questions. We're going to hit the mean streets in New York City and just see how savvy these New Yorkers are when it comes to pop culture. You know,
well, and listen, I think you have to be as fierce as all you're explaining, but you also, here's the get. This is what I'm going to tell you. You also have to have fun with it too. And that's what, like, one of my big problems in the past. It's like, I am working so hard and I like generally love what I do. But I had a friend recently, he's like, doesn't seem like you have fun. And I'm like, no, I have fun with the work, the thing that I fell in love with as a kid. I was the kid growing up that had the toilet paper wrapper, looked in the mirror, and was a little 12-year-old or 15-year-old, and I was like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like I was on an episode of TRL. Right. I was obsessed with the Johnny Carson, the Dick Cavett, the Jack Parr. Like I loved that. And so I've always had the passion in that. It's the business side has really sort of made me frustrated, as it would do for anybody if you've done something for 20 years. Right. So lately, and I don't know, I'm in life coach mode, I guess, but I'm like, to what you're saying, I'm like, fierceness, sure. Pivot, sure. But also the fun. That's like kind of my new thing that I actually have to look in the mirror and tell myself recently. And I've been doing it. And it kind of is unlocking a lot. Another thing, when I met you, when I was in your class, it was everybody defining their brand 155 years ago, right? I did class with you so long ago. And I defined the brand Randomly Ronnie. I don't even know if you necessarily loved it at the time or even cared because you had a lot of students. But the point is, you were like random, like you were just trying to grab what that was because it wasn't niche. And I really stepped in it and said, no, I'm random because I could do it all. So It's an ambitious thing to say, but I think going forward now, I'm like, I gotta hit all of that randomness. Meaning, like even recently,
my branding brain just went to 18 different places. Like, hey, this is Randomly Ronnie. I'm on the mean streets of New York. I'm ask random strangers some random pop culture questions. Yeah. And if they randomly answer me and stop to talk to me, because if they don't think I'm trying to scam them or frisk them or rob from them, then they'll get a little sweet treat from me. Or, I've got $5 bills, a cup of coffee, whatever it may be. Boom. Hey, this is Randomly Ronnie, and we are randomly breaking down the random reality rants of this week. You need to own that brand even more. And utilizing every platform you possibly can with almost, you have to treat it like you're the star and you're the network now.
And the network, that's what one of my best friends said. Yes. Yeah. And that's what I'm going to tell you. So I had got, again, this is coming from being in my own way. And then now I'm kind of getting out of it, which was, sure, I was doing Randomly Ronnie, and it was very much in the pop culture space. Very good stuff. But it really was staying in a certain space. And recently, you're right. It's like you've got to think as a network. And also, maybe one day down the road, you'll be an executive for a big network. But what I thought is, I was like, okay, I can't have the name Randomly, and I'm just doing sort of the one thing. So now I've moved into real estate conversations. I moved into small business conversations. I've moved into foodie stuff, like all of these different things. And I have no qualms at all if, like, my let's say expected audience is used to one thing. It's like, no, you signed up as a viewer, and specifically my patreon.com/randomly Ronnie Jr. You signed up for this. You signed up for, we're going to take you everywhere. And I could do that. Okay, I'm a little too confident now. Let me simmer down.
I love that. There's so many real estate shows, like Randomly Real Estate Reality with Ronnie. And you have like once a month, you have a Ryan Serhant on. You have
Ryan Serhant,
someone from Buying Beverly Hills, because now that's canceled. Get some of the people on to, talk about what it was like selling real estate and balancing. Josh and Heather just stepped down from $1 Million Listing. Like, reach out to someone and to that, like, meaning. And then now it's like random real estate reality stars talk balance. You know what I mean? But that's. You need to create, because before when I would teach, everybody wanted to learn to host for a network to hire them. Now when I teach, I'm teaching them how to host, how to build a brand, but also how to be the network head, how to be the head of the PR team, how to do it all. So it's way more challenging, but I love it. Meaning, because it's really about going, no, you have to be doing X, Y, and Z, and you have to be literally using all of these platforms. And here's what your audience needs to understand. Network executives have no imagination. They're fearful. If they don't see it, they don't get it. They're too afraid to take a risk. Like, I picked Ronnie over Rob Lowe. And the show's not a hit. Am I going to lose my job because I picked Ronnie? So to go back to the drama queen and you schooling me, because Dance Moms was such a huge hit, and Jeff Collins, who produced Dance Moms, produced my show, The Drama Queen, they wanted me to be like the Abby Lee Miller of, this world. But then They didn't even use my office when I would
Yeah.
be negotiating a deal for a client I'm managing. They'd be like, we don't want to show that on E because we're NBC and you're negotiating with CBS, a competing network.
Wow. Yeah.
One day we shot my boot camp and all the camera guys and makeup and hair and everybody was at my studio and I'm teaching a boot camp. And all of the camera and audio people came up to me and go, this is the fucking show, man. You are brilliant when you're teaching. Did they show 1 ounce of that? Never. Nope. And to me, it was like, if you want me to be like Abby, she teaches fucking dance. Let me teach my goddamn classes. No, you're too worried about me going to therapy with my baby daddy. And that's not authentic.
Yeah.
So to be perfectly honest, I hated it because it was not my authentic life, and that's why it didn't succeed, because if they would have authentically had Marki Costello unapologetically doing what she does, it would have been a huge hit. But you are trying to mold me into, I'm not Abby Lee Miller.
Yeah. So they're taking a foregone conclusion, a success, and they're just trying to
format that worked and then trying to put me in that format versus that format worked. Now let's evolve this format, taking like 3 kernels from this one and popping them with this one, but they're too afraid.
Yeah, yeah. And I was just going to jokingly say, had you had me on the show, would have been way better. Because, I worked at Marki's office, but that's the detachment that I had when I watched it. Because I'm like, okay, I worked at Marki's office at the point that you...
And you're like, this isn't her. Right.
I was like, I was like, let's keep the camera rolling, raw footage, Right. And I worked in the office. I know how you would, you would have people come into that office with all the gusto, and then they would go out darn near, in tears, and then they would be mad at you because they thought you didn't know shit suddenly. But then they would come back around and be like, oh, I implemented some of those teachings and it worked for the career. So it was a lot of that. And so when I watched it, of course, I moved to New York at the time, so I couldn't do the show regardless. But I was jokingly like, oh, you should add me on the show. And it was even like the little, because you have a lot of little, neurotic things about you. Your office is so... your office, when you work in your office, like, you better get used to like the way you will walk up slow, just slivering like a cat, like a cheetah, and you will walk to the desk and you will see your orchid. She will stare at her orchid, she will sliver over and she'll just grab one of the petals, she'll look at it and she'll be like, Ronnie, go get me some more orchids. You know what I'm saying? And if you get the coffee too, like when I would do your coffee order, and I did other stuff too, I worked on the back end with some of the digital stuff, all the things, made great phone calls for all the clients, networks. I did a lot with you, but even the other stuff, it was so neurotic in a really like compelling way. And all we saw on Drama Queen on the E channel was a different thing, so I just make the joke that it should have been your office, the way you would come to the table, you would spray down the table. It's like you were looking for dirt all the time. You'd get your little pins that were like with your clients, and you would just like move them around. I was like, why is she so busybody? What's going on?
Once again, all of that neuroticness and what I did to make people stars. I mean, people would come. Listen, I've had everybody from, Whitney Cummings to, Alex Curry to Carrie Champion to Jason. You think about all of the people that came through my doors. It's mind-boggling.
Can I say on Drama Queen for 1 second with the E channel? The E channel at that time, I felt like it needed a big success.
Right.
Are you at all you just kind of stated that like, you did it, whatever. It wasn't the show that was great for you, which is fine. But with that being said, was there a frustration that like, dang, I know I could have delivered for multiple seasons. Obviously, that would have changed the game within your business. Not that you need the reality show, but is there a part of you that looks back that wishes, because again, I'm saying at that time, and even now, the E channel's sort of been falling short.
Right.
Do you get mad about them not picking you up for a second season, or were you
get mad because at the end of the day, I feel like the universe never conspires against us. The universe conspires for us, like meaning. And so I guess that was my story. Like I wake up every day. I'm so grateful for everything I have in my life. You know what I mean? Because and the universe has never disappointed me, and it will continue to take care of me. And I live my life like that. I'm in this great evolution where, I'll go to a college. I'll go to, University of Oregon. They're the #1 football team on the college circuit right now, and work with the Oregon Ducks, but maybe won't make the NFL. But how can they utilize the 900,000 followers they have? How can they build a brand that can help
That's huge right now.
college? That's what I love.
That's huge right now, you know, and not that the athletes don't want to win in that world, but you're seeing the Pat McAfee, who I believe, not taken away from his athleticism, but I believe he was a kicker, is what my brother said.
Yeah.
And so it's like you have this new world that some people are becoming more successful in this podcast, you know, content creation space. It's really like, I guess you made sense earlier. You said there's no guardrails anymore. Things have certainly changed. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. For what it's worth, though, I think the E! Channel did mess up by not bringing you back for another season. I think it could have changed. It could have evolved. In New York City, I was dear friends with Stephanie, and I think Stephanie went on to go do, you know, become a news reporter. And she's just really wonderful. So you had it all. It just needed to be like, you know, shaken up a little bit. And I thought, I used to say this, just as an outsider looking in and a supporter and a friend of yours, I used to say if she would have got that second season, she would have got like 8 seasons.
Right. Well, you know,
but you only gave her 1. You didn't give it enough chance to go, you know? Yeah.
And what's interesting too is that, like, you know, someone like Stephanie, you know, who worked in my office, who took classes, like, I mean, you know, she did it all for me. But look at how I really pumped out great people that worked in my office, great talent, meaning, because I think people, one thing about me is I have crazy work ethic. I mean, if I was teaching a boot camp I work 7 days a week. I mean, I loved working. I loved my business. I love what I built. I mean, my company, you know, we cast the first Bachelor, you know, the biggest hit, the biggest unscripted, you know, reality show. Jackie Pittman, who I've known for 50 years, we worked at Love Connection together, is doing the Golden Bachelor at Rhett and just got nominated for an Emmy. Back in my day, there weren't Emmys for when we were doing unscripted, but it's okay. Everything evolves, and I don't have any regrets. You've got to evolve, and to, like, we kind of were gossiping like about Teresa and Melissa from the Real Housewives of New Jersey.
Real Housewives in New York, New Jersey. Yep. Bravo.
And why it's not working, where I'm team Gorgas all the way.
Yes.
But the problem with Teresa is she had the flipping table. She went to jail. She had all of these crazy things that made for good reality. But then it just became the same old shit. Yeah. She couldn't take any accountability. And then when Louis came in, we thought, okay, maybe Louis will be good reality TV, because clearly he's a hot mess who's just a sociopath looking for, you know, someone that's going to take care of him. And we saw that, like, you know, he was pushing her in a way that wasn't going to be good. It's like he was filling her head with, like, you're the star. This is your show. No, sweetheart. One thing you have to learn about the franchise of the Real Housewives, the brand, the Real Housewives, is the star. Yeah. And the women are interchangeable. The minute you get it twisted and you think this is my show, I'm the star, and it's going to go away if I'm not on it. No, honey. It's years ago. There was a host named Julie Moran who was on Entertainment Tonight, and her husband Rob was a client of mine at the management company. And when they were renegotiating her deal, he would say, like, yeah, she's holding out for, you know, so much money, and she's the big name. And I literally looked at him one day and I said, Rob, Entertainment Tonight is the brand, sweetheart. Anybody, any host can come in and read the prompter and toss to some packages and hit a red carpet. Entertainment Tonight is the brand. Your wife is not the brand. 6 months later, they said, she was like, I want $1 million, you know, a week. And they said, no, bye. And of course, Entertainment Tonight, 40 years later, is still going strong. That's the problem that Teresa is getting it. Teresa and Louis are thinking they're the show. Teresa's the star, and it can't go on without her. Oh, Bravo show. It could go on without her.
Yeah. Well, as strong as Bravo is, yes. Yeah. And we're going to go more into Housewives in a little bit, because I want to know your thoughts on, like, a great Larsa Pippen. I want to know your thoughts on a wonderful Melissa Gorga, as we're talking about. Some of the ones Luann, the delusion that is Luann, in the best possible way. So we'll do a Bravo moment in a second. But as what you're saying, I think what you were saying even about Teresa is, like, it can't be one note, you know? No. And so when we think about pivoting, when we think about career direction, this is something for everybody, but specifically if you have a brand, right? So what is it that you always took from Joan Rivers and that constant career reinvention? Because you're older than me. You, of course, like, I love Joan Rivers, but I feel like you have more years on me of, like, consuming her work. What is it about Joan Rivers that kind of just A, we miss her so much, but B, how did she have the tenacity to keep going? What do you think that is?
Well, number one, if Joan was alive today, she would hate what's happened to the world of comedy, where you
Mm.
have to be so PC and you can't say this. She would absolutely hate it, and
Yeah.
rightfully so, because it's comedy. The second thing, what was so brilliant about Joan was she would look at her calendar, and if she wasn't booked 3 months in advance, she'd be like, okay, time to pivot, time to reinvent. You know
Mhm.
what? Maybe the 20 to 30-year-olds don't know who I am, but the 40s, 50, and 60-year-olds do. I'm going to do Celebrity Apprentice and introduce myself to a whole new audience.
Mhm.
I'm going to sit on the sidelines at red carpet and I'm going to trash people and what they're wearing. And once again, with my daughter, introduced to a whole new audience.
Mhm.
She was brilliant at reinvention. She was the queen of reinvention. She would never let herself get stagnant or stale. If
Mhm.
Joan was alive today, her TikTok would have 5 million followers.
I
Fucking
believe
brilliant.
it. I
Yeah.
remember she had and it was in the early stages of going to, her who gets all that regular work on these big
Right.
networks at the time, but it was the early stages of like a YouTube channel. It was a little bit more
Right.
funny at the time. She had this series towards the end called In Bed with Joan. The
Loved it.
hysterical goofiness, again, it's just continuing to do something different.
Right.
In terms of comedy and the way she appreciated comedy, so wonderful. Do you think at all, because there was a little bit of a comparison, do you think the TV show on HBO Max called Hacks has a little bit of that Joan Rivers-ness about it, in terms of Gene Smart is the lead on that? Do you feel like there's a similarity of that story that they show on the TV show?
Yes and no. I feel like Joan in some ways was a little bit more humble, if you will, like where Gene Hacks, where her character is very, and on Hacks, Gene Smart
Gene Smart,
is,
yeah.
yeah, she's, I, I wouldn't even know who to sort of emulate, who to make the analogy of who her character could be. I
Mm-hmm.
could say very loosely it would be Joan, but
Mm-hmm.
Joan, like Andrew Krasny, who's my good friend who wrote for Joan for years, who was great friends with Joan and Melissa. I mean, I just knew so much about Joan, and Joan was very relatable and down to earth. I think Joan was just I think Joan was before her time in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Even getting, Johnny's spot and like, Edgar, her husband, blowing it and her having
Mm-hmm.
to reinvent after
That's
she was blackballed,
yeah.
basically. And as a woman, come on,
Mm-hmm.
and not like
And what year is that? That is like that's still late. What
no,
is that? Early 70s?
that was 80s,
Oh,
early
that was
80s.
already the 80s. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think she was brilliant at reinvention. She was brilliant at reading the room. She was just so fucking funny.
Mm,
And like I said, if Joan was alive today, I think it would just really upset her with how like, "Oh, we
mhm.
can't say that. Oh, you can't." She would be like, "What the fuck?" That's what
Yeah.
comics do. We
Yeah.
get up there and we offend. Not everybody's gonna love us, but they're gonna laugh, hate us, throw shit at us, but it's okay
Well,
because
and
we're
that joke now jokes aren't like formulated jokes. They're
no,
like, and they said this on Hack, so this is why I kind of maybe
right.
thought of that. It's just an interesting thought bubble. It's like an odd, unique thing. That's not a joke. That's not comedy. And I think that's what I really love about the old school. What a crushing time for her though, that she rocked out with Johnny Carson in such a way, was the lead fill-in, and then when things didn't go away, I think she went to Fox, correct?
Fox gave her her own late night show.
And that is, to our knowledge, that relationship was completely severed, right? Johnny did not take to that.
No,
What is that about? How does she? Maybe this is why she's so scrappy, actually. you know?
well, I mean, and I know this story, but I can't remember every detail, so I don't want to give it justice. But then when she went to Fox, okay,
Mhm.
her husband, Edgar, who later committed
Yeah.
suicide because I think he blamed himself. Like he was producing, which once again, not probably a good combo. Like meaning
Mhm.
you're married, like there has to be some separation because sometimes you need an executive producer or a head writer to be like, that's bullshit. We're not doing it. It sucks. Trust me, you'll thank me tomorrow. And
Mhm.
I think when you're married or so close to someone, you might not be able to navigate that fine line, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so when the Fox show got canceled, and I think Edgar took it very personally, and he took his life. But once again, look at her reinvention after Edgar like, meaning no one wanted to touch her with a 10-foot pole. Her husband committed suicide. She fucked over Johnny Carson, and her Fox show was canceled. She was poisoned, but she persevered. She reinvented, and like they just had a big and I think it wasn't a roast, but they just had a big tribute to Joan in New York at the Apollo Theater to so many comics, because once again, I think they realize how those women paved the way. And Joan wasn't like, drop dead gorgeous. She was, I mean, that was part of her shtick and her humor, but just brilliant on every level. She was, smart with money. She was brilliant on every level. And very sadly missed. But on the other note, I think she would hate where we are today. But I would love to see her interview show, in the bed with Joan. Brilliant in this day and age.
Oh, yeah. It would definitely be received well. One last thing about Joan Rivers before we move on to Real Housewives and Bravo banter, which, by the way, I think I could see you on Bravo, so we'll talk about that too, in my opinion. And I don't want to waste all your time, but let's talk. This is my last thing about Joan Rivers, and it's not really Joan itself. It's about honing the craft. It is about the follow through. So, and it's so funny because if I mention this, Marki, it's as if it's like, oh, you're not adapting and you're not like in the quick social media landscape. While I respect and understand that, let me just go back for a second. What I loved about Joan Rivers, and of course we saw Jean Smart's character in Hacks also do this, is the Rolodex of taking notes and peeling back these interesting scenarios that we go through. I think it's interesting that because we now could be a viral success if we eat a Tide Pod, that we have lost the art of honing the craft of what it is that you do. And I used to think that too within myself when I was coming up in radio. I remember there was those different stages. There was the stage where I was overly prepared because I was really green. I was brand new. I was 21 years old, driving to Bakersfield in the middle of the night, which was no fun. Bakersfield, what a city, right? And I'm doing my radio show, and at that time I was so prepared. But then I remember working my butt off to get to a point where I'm like, oh no, you've elevated, you've gotten a little bit better, thankfully. And you could more, I don't want to say wing it, but you can be more like off the cuff. And I remember thinking that was follow me here. I remember thinking that was the note of like success. Like I can just like jump in. I have a natural talent. And while that's good, I still think, if I get an opportunity to interview you, I did a ton of research, even though I know you. If I get the opportunity to interview anybody that is of interest to me, I just think we're losing that sense of doing the work. Do you follow kind of what I'm saying? And
one thing that I disagree with when you said, when you interview someone that interests you and your audience,
okay.
Is your audience going to give a shit about Joan Rivers? I don't know, because it's your audience. Or does your audience care more about the Real Housewives?
Yeah.
I don't know. Meaning that's something like, you know what I mean?
You said, so like add that into the thought process. Like it can't just be what you consume.
It can't be about you. It's got to be about your audience is the star and you're the co-star.
Yeah.
That's the key to success.
Yeah.
But there was another point I wanted to make, which I hate about this aspect of the business. If I see one more people eating in their car, can someone explain to me that? Like, hey, I'm trying the crumble cookies, and they're like taking a bite, and I'm seeing, and they always cover their mouth when they're chewing. It's like, why do we have to see you eat it?
Well, and maybe that's what I'm talking about. Like, I understand that's maybe more fun. Maybe it feels more natural. Maybe that's why people or audiences are taking to that. And while that's what's for the now. I'm just saying the type of person I am when I want to consume something, I like to know that the person worked their butt off to give what it is that they gave. Just the same way as when you go into a doctor, when you go get the most wonderful restaurant, you want to make sure that there's like the follow through. And so, yeah, it's a little hard to kind of like give that comparison, but I've learned that over the times going forward, I really respect anybody who hones their craft, because it's sort of becoming a little bit of a lost art form, like, and that's the thing too. Why don't you want to know everything? If it's something that you're doing, you should want to know everything. I'm gaining. Why?
This generation thinks they know everything. They have Google.
Well,
They have
Marky.
Chat GPT. They think they know everything. And I'm not saying your generation. I'm saying the generation below you. They think they know everything. They don't need any kind of coaching. It's interesting. Like, I coach some big name people that make millions of dollars that are very successful, but they get the power of coaching, where these young kids think, I know everything, and they don't get the power of it.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. And remember, I gave you that example with radio. It's like when I first started, overly prepared. When I got good, I was like, I could just wing it. That was like a beacon of like, oh, you're a little bit better, which is fine. But then I got to that stage. I remember when I was working with Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro at After Buzz, it was like Maria she was that girl. She was as good as you're going to get at that skill set, but the preparation was always so wonderful. And I remember just seeing that, and I'm like, I need to do that too, because at the end of the day, you want to kind of be prepared and have different lanes to go down. That you kind of want to, it's like being an athlete. You want to make sure you can be the best basketball player in the world, but you're going to be shooting baskets, all night, if you can. Okay, so we got to find out why Marki is not on Bravo, because I think you should come in and, first of all, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. People say it's the crown jewel of the franchise. I couldn't disagree more. What do you think about Beverly Hills? I'm going to tell you the cast member that I have not liked since season 1, episode 1, frame 1. And let me just turn it over to you, because I always hear how wonderful Beverly Hills is.
Tell me who is it that you don't like?
Since season 1, episode 1, frame 1, I looked at this show and I says, what is this Kyle doing on the show? Like, very, 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 very boring to me. And then I look down the road at other franchises. You have to have that person who's what is it called? Like the person of reason, right? Like a Candy Burris on Atlanta. But I just don't. Huh?
You need the anchor. That person who's.
So do you think she's that? Do you think Kyla is the anchor?
Andy loves her. She can no wrong. She's the anchor, and you need that. Same with Candy. Candy was the anchor on Atlanta. When you have like the crazy Nenes, and you have, you need the anchor. I think, on, Giselle or the Grand Dame is on Potomac, the anchor, right? Like, you need that anchor for all of the craziness. But I think what's also happening is they're becoming like such big stars and celebrities that the more successful they get, they're like, I don't want to share this. Like what's happening on New York when what's her name said, oh, well, do you want to workshop how we're going to talk about that? Wait, what?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like that's on New York. What's her name?
Bryn? Was that Bryn?
Yeah, Bryn said,
oh, wow.
Rebecca Minkoff on like the second episode, and they kept it on camera and they didn't edit it out, which was really weird. And you're like, wait, is she breaking the fourth wall? Like, is she producing herself and Rebecca? And then in that same episode or the next one, they're sitting at the table in the Hamptons, and she's like, well, how do you want to address that? Maybe I'll say this and you say that. And I think what we're getting at is that, like, I mean, New York is a mess. I miss Luann. I miss Sonia. I mean, even that Ramona, I kind of miss her because she's so ridiculous. But, what was so great about that, you had Dorinda, you had Sonia, you had Luann, you had Ramona. What was
Carol? Remember Carol? Oh, my Carol was,
I know, but what was so great about those ladies is, like, you know what? They would go to St. Bart's and they'd get hammered and fall down a stair and fuck a pirate. And it was brilliant. You know what I mean? Like, and it was just like you were peeing in your pants. Or even Luann doing her, cabaret show. It's like you're a horrible singer, Luann, but selling out these places because people are going to not laugh. They're laughing with and at you in some way, right?
100%. And Luann came on the scene as the Countess, so refined. And now she cannot be more delusionally in love with herself in the best possible way. Yeah, I was watching
cigarettes, and getting hammered and singing cabaret. It's brilliant.
Okay, so let's go back to Beverly Hills real quick. Okay. Beverly Hills, do you feel it is the crown jewel of the franchise? And would, being that you are as Los Angeles and as Hollywood and as Beverly Hills as you're going to get, would you want to mix and mingle with those gals at any time? Because it does seem like sometimes they get some really great success. I thought it was a bad idea to get rid of Lisa Rinna. And the reason I bring up Lisa Rinna is they're bringing in people, which I customarily don't like this. You have a name. It doesn't always work is what I'm saying. But Lisa Rinna, it did work. Jennifer Tilly onto the show. You also have a name in this business, right? Within casting, within the granddaughter of Lou Costello, et cetera, et cetera. You have so much going on. Would you want to do that? Because I feel like it's a much different experience than when you did E! Channel's The Drama Queen, which was your show. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. You know, to be perfectly honest, I don't think I'd want to do a reality show like that. But I'll tell you who's the standout star, hands down, on Beverly Hills. It's Kathy Hilton. She is effing brilliant. I love when she's like showing up at the airport in her slippers. You know what I mean? I love when she was like, "Who's Honky Dory?" I mean, like Kathy Hilton is the sleeper hit on Beverly Hills Housewives. I love how she does a season. She doesn't do a season. She comes on as a main housewife. Then she's a friend. I love that because the audience loves her. And, you know, her husband, Rick Hilton, you have, you know, Paris and Nikki and her sons. I mean, she is the star. You know what I mean? She really is. But I don't mind Kyle. I think, you know, what's interesting is now that Mauricio and her are separated, I hope that she allows that to play out. If she doesn't, that will be a huge mistake on Bravo's part and Evolution's part. They need to say, Kyle, we love you. And you're the anchor of our show, and we love you, but it's the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So we have to really dive into the reality of what is going on in your relationships and lives. And if we can't get Morgan and we can't get you know, we need all of that. So this season is going to be very, very telling for Beverly Hills, because if it's not coming to fruition and it's all being kind of like, and even Dorit and PK. I mean, PK is singing, you know, to the microphone by himself in his hotel room, like after his 50-pound weight loss of Ozempic. I can't wait to see how Dorit is this season. You know, I'll tell you which franchise I think sucks the most is Potomac.
Not anymore though. It had some lower seasons, but it's bouncing back, I gotta say, in my opinion.
Not a fan of Mia. Not a fan of Mia. Not a fan of Mia.
Mia's over the top. She is over the top. And she does. Here's the problem with Mia. She's been entertaining across some of her seasons, sure. But I think we talked about this when we were talking about another person. I can't remember. But she has sort of the one note. You know what I mean? Like we know what we're getting, which is kind of good and comforting. But I think Mia, to excel going forward, it's almost like there's like a shield like that. Like she's like, I'm going to be the Kim Cattrall of the show. I mean, I'm not saying that's her angle, but we just need even Kim Cattrall. I mean, it's a scripted, but in Sex and the City, her character, you know, was what it was. And then she, you know, was going through cancer and like there was layers. And I think Mia, obviously it's reality versus scripted, but Mia is not giving us much else, I think. Yeah.
With Mia, there's something I don't buy about her. I feel like, you know, her stripper turned housewife turned, you know, unconsciously uncoupling with her bipolar baby, you know, husband, baby daddy. Like, I don't know. There's just something I don't buy. Maybe I need to watch more of the season unfold. You know, but Grand Dame, I'm like, you know, once again, like, Karen, you got a fucking DUI, you're getting sued. Like, you know what I mean? Like, stop, like, with your bullshit of your, we'll see what happens in court. Bitch, you were fucking drunk. You smashed your Maserati that didn't have insurance, that wasn't registered. You know what I mean? Going 60 miles an hour on a back Potomac road. Like,
wait, so are you saying Karen is like a liar? Because I think, like, okay, here's the defense that usually I believe she brings up is that she can't speak on this stuff legally. But I mean, I don't know. Where do we sit with that? You know?
Bitch, please. I'll tell you, but
not the word PITCH.
I know, but Karen's facelift looks flawless. She looks amazing. Whoever was the doctor did a brilliant job. I love her short hair. I love her facelift.
Yeah, her confessionals are so gorgeous. Yeah,
I love. Yeah, but can we talk about Tamra this season on OC? I hate
real quick. I don't want to leave Potomac for 1 second. Right. Yeah. I want to say Giselle has always been a star. She's had some rougher seasons. I interviewed her, and let me tell you about Giselle. I interviewed her years ago. I think it was her 3rd season. And I think the problem with Giselle is, you know how like nowadays you come onto a show and some of the cast members are interacting with like 7,000 different bloggers or whatever the case. Well, a lot of them are, I'm not going to say, but they're new to this, so to speak. And within where I sit, I've been doing this for quite some time. So I like I receive the talent and the interview experience a little bit different. Was Giselle rough and raw and brash? A little bit, but she also loved on me. I gave the greatest interview. We both found out that we were Virgos. We both love Kenya Moore. It was like one of those really, really good interviews. So I think that Giselle is in a space where she doesn't like pander. And I think that sometimes people look at that as like she's a little bit more of a bitch than she actually is. But one thing
I love Giselle, and I think Giselle is literally the anchor of Potomac, FYI.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and she comes in and she goes, well, wait a minute. What did you say? Did you say that? Like, she just always is assertive. And I think that's valuable. And I just want to do one more note before we get off Potomac. They added a new cast member named Stacey. And it might just be the timing, a delusional, I won't be mean, but like almost like an airhead. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. You think Stacey is boring? No, Marky, no.
No. Okay. I mean, I guess more will be revealed. I just find her like she's got all of this shit going on. She's dating a guy that they haven't had sex. She's going through a divorce. She has a daughter. She moved from Philadelphia QVC back to Potomac. I just feel like hopefully more will be revealed. Right now, I just feel like you know what? I take that back. She's come on smart, because when you come in so hot, it always backfires. So she's sort of come in and she's not coming in hot. So I hope I just see her story evolve more. That's all I hope.
You know what? And I'll take a little bit of it back too, because I don't think she's boring. However, I think what you were saying, because you are experienced in casting, so you would know, what you're saying is, how long could she be shock and awe? You know, that is funny. Now, you are right. I'll give you that. You were so right about that. And if she has these dynamic things that are happening, how long? I think what makes it great though, she's living the full fantasy.
But to casting, Ronnie, I want to school you and your network and everybody that's listening.
Okay.
What made me a brilliant reality casting director, breaking the ceiling before anybody else, was I was always brilliant, because I would say it's never about their A story. A great casting director can discover their B and C story. And so we've seen her we're seeing her A story, but what is her B story? Why did they get divorced? You know what I mean? How is the husband okay with this sort of relationship, or isn't he okay? Is she okay not having sex? Why isn't the boyfriend having sex with her? Okay, religious reasons. Meaning, to me, I think he's gay. That's a whole other story, you know what I mean? But you know, those stories I hope unfold, and it doesn't stay this sort of superficial. She's beautiful. Like you said, the shock and awe. Oh my God. Like,
I don't know where we go from here.
I do. I'll make a brilliant transition to OC Tamra.
Oh, okay. Real Housewives of Orange County. Okay.
Real Housewives of Orange County. This is a perfect example of someone not having a storyline, making her whole storyline of hating Shannon and outing Shannon and calling Shannon a drunk. And reality TV and human beings love a comeback. They love when someone falls, and they love when they come back and they're real and relatable. I mean, hello, Ariana Madix has built a whole career on it.
Yeah.
So Beth, I mean, so Tamra, you know what I mean? She would have been better off befriending Shannon, being there for her, driving her to meetings, being that supportive friend. That could have been her storyline versus you're a drunk, I hate you, you're this, you're that. And then, you know, talking about her to everybody behind Shannon's back. But what was weird is I've always been a big fan of Heather Dubrow, which I think Heather needs to move from the OC to the franchise of Beverly Hills Real Housewives.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. When they say she's condescending, this, that, or the other, it's like, here's the thing too. And I know people have struggled with this. Just because somebody is of affluence does not mean that they're naturally looking down upon you. Now, there's a very real reason that does happen quite a bit. But Heather seems to be a little bit of a delight. And if she wants to take a little bit more time and she's a little more poised and she carries herself a different way, you, the person receiving her friendship, you can't put your projections on certain things. And I agree with you. I think she has been nothing but exciting on.
I love Heather.
I mean, and also because she's an actress too, there's a little bit of that. I would not use the word pretentious, but there's a little bit of she knows how to perform. But when I would start to see Heather's confessionals, I remember watching this last season of OC, maybe even last season too, where I was like, it felt like she was even being filmed differently. Like I was like, is the camera panning or is it a different shot? It felt so different because just the way she sits in that chair, the way she knows how to deliver. This is much of stuff what you teach as well.
Right.
And I agree that if the OC gals kind of can't take her, there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a great cast right now, but I think she'd be wonderful for Beverly Hills, and she'd be able to ask the questions. And wait a minute, Dorit, wait, did that happen? Like, I think that's what Heather's good at. She comes in, she has that scowl, and she's like, well, Sutton, I don't remember you telling me that. Right. I could see that, Yeah.
Totally. And I really think that is, I really hope that they move her to Beverly Hills. And I think OC, did you like the new girl, Katie?
No, I mean, it's like, even if you did, the reunion was very difficult because you can give a whole season and you could be so full of it the whole season, but after the season goes, the women will catch you in your lies, and it just felt hard to like root for her for a coming season. But and maybe you'll agree with this, casting more than me. Because of that, I feel like now I want a second season, because it's as if she gave a presented season the way she wanted to be perceived.
Yeah.
And now in a reunion, they said, but wait a minute. So if you let her go, I don't know, give her another season and now make her walk in that. I don't know. I think she could go on a second time.
I agree wholeheartly. I feel like I didn't understand until the reunion. I was like, wait, whoa. Yeah. There's her B story. There's her C story. Like the husband, the thing, the road rage thing, and putting a guy in jail. The husband having custody, not custody, her living in a car. Summer, one's in San Diego, one's in Atlanta. She's got, meaning.
I understand her not wanting to bring up the ex-husband stuff. The thing that made it challenging is while they kept asking her questions, I, as a viewer, got chills. Like I got like chills of like, she's not going to be able to answer that. That's a very interesting watch when you see somebody that you're like, that the person is sort of living in a lie. So when they would ask her a question, I'd like shudder. I'd be like, she's not going to be able to like answer that because she just said it differently a second ago. I can't keep track of the lies. Yeah. But generally a decent season. What did you think about Shannon Beador? She certainly had like her comeback season. People like, really not comeback season, but like, season of love. And the Alexis stuff. Was Alexis that bad? I never liked Alexis per se, so I'm not,
I never liked her, but I thought she was an interesting addition because of the whole Johnny J, the whole John Jansen, you know what I mean?
Right. She was a little fun, actually. Like, it's like, you could still like Shannon, because a lot of people's like, they love Shannon, but they like Alexis. No, Alexis was still okay. And it was a little much, but here's what I'm gonna break it down to is also she talked about, maybe this is like you say, the B storyline or whatever. What is it? When you're Alexis, you've been off the show for a long time, you find new love, whatever the intentions, who knows? She says her mother passed. That's a different stage of life. So the stage of life with her mother, the stage of life with the new love, the stage of life with, these OC former friends and cast members, I think there was some intriguing stuff with Alexis. So I don't throw her where I wouldn't want to see her back. I'd be okay with her coming back. Yeah.
And come back as a friend, meaning she doesn't like, I think she was kind of brilliant. She popped in when she needed to, and it stirred a little drama. I think if Shannon gets picked up for the next season, Shannon now has to kind of like stop the walking out. Like she'll get up at a restaurant and walk out, stop with those little like, fits, and stay and put your big girl panties on and say, no, Tamra, I never said that. Here, I'm happy to show my phone to everybody. Like, because Tamra was such a bully. I would have loved to have seen Shannon stand up to that bully way more. And Emily, I usually love Emily. This season, I liked her more because I feel like she really is feeling herself in a great way. And she looks great. And I feel like Emily's always so honest. And I find that refreshing. I feel like Emily, a lot of stuff we're thinking as the audience, the viewers, I feel like Emily will have our back to be like, no, like, and I loved how Emily and Gina rallied for Shannon and rode for Shannon this season. I really liked it. And Emma and Gina, of all people, could have been really pissed at Shannon, but she was like, nope, I was there. I forgive her. And it really made me love Gina way more this season. I feel like Shannon, Emily, and Gina for sure should come back. I think Heather should be moved to Beverly Hills in a nanosecond. I think she would really shake shit up and give Sutton a run for her money, being the manners queen, Sutton, and this and that. I think Heather would give her a run for her money. And then, I think Jen and the whole thing with the boyfriend and, the Dodger gambling and that whole, I think there's something interesting there. And I think what Jen represents to all those Orange County women that have, been married, said the husband made the money and paid the mortgage, to sort of like, okay, now you're divorced and, you have 5 kids and you've got to work, and her opening up a yoga studio, which is the equivalent, like becoming a realtor, right? Like you do have course, you open up a yoga studio, you get in great shape, or you become a realtor. And I think Tamra did both with the cut fitness and being a realtor in the first couple of seasons. That's like the iconic job for a housewife. But and Gina's a realtor. It's funny that I say that now. I think about all the realtors, period. But I think OC was interesting. I think next season will be make or break for OC.
Do you bring back like a Gretchen or a Vicki at all? I was so interested to see Gretchen on the girls trip that won't air.
I know.
And so now that it's not airing, I wonder if that makes it harder for them to have a reason to bring her back. Because if you think about it, Phaedra did good on the girls trips, that series, as did Tamra. And by both of them doing good, that's where they got to come back to their to a show. Phaedra, of course, went to Married to Medicine. But and so I in my head I was like, I know like an Alex McCord wasn't going to go anywhere, but it would have been fun to watch. But I do think a Gretchen in my mind, let's bring her back, and I didn't watch all the early seasons.
Married, especially Gretchen being married to Slade still, and them having a daughter. I mean, I think Gretchen would be a really fun friend to have. And I think having Alexis come back, Gretchen, Shannon, and Vicki coming back as a friend too would be brilliant.
You absolutely bring Vicki back as a friend. Let her maybe not get the biggest of paychecks, but you're still on the show. She's got that 100%. New podcast. Vicki on her podcast is an interesting person. And again, I didn't watch all the early seasons per se. I'm like later to OC. I mean, I sporadically watch, but you can't have somebody who wants to be on the show that badly, who started this, who will do it at a drop of a dime, not given the opportunity. You put Vicki on that show. You put Vicki on that show.
Ronnie, what do you think of 2 T's and a podcast?
I think Tamra does bring something. I don't understand. I've never understood any fascination with Teddy. And I don't know if this is let's go into the therapy here. Like, do I get a little like, Teddy, you are, in theory, a nepotism baby. You've had a lot given to you. And to just kind of not be that interesting or that successful or something is just so unfun with Teddy. I just have never been able to do it. But I'm gonna tell you one thing. This is where, and I think you were mentioning this when we were talking about career and branding and your coaching, right? Marki Costello, great coach with talent management, et cetera, et cetera. You were talking about if you're an athlete, but you don't make it to the big time, what do you do with that following? How do you create your web series? How do you like monetize? One thing about Teddy, even if I don't like her, what Teddy and Tamra did was they got taken off their respective shows and they became not bigger, but they became big enough to draw enough attention to come back to the shows. That is now becoming a model for other people who have done shows.
What do you think they make from that podcast, honestly?
Probably a decent amount, because I think, I don't even care, but probably a decent amount. Yeah. But I think it also goes further. I think if Tamra wasn't doing that with Teddy, I'm not sure she's getting The Traders. The Traders was the show on Peacock Streaming with Alan Cummings as the host. Yeah. I don't think she necessarily. I think it's money, yes, but I think it's attention, and that attention draws to opportunity. So again, as much as I don't like Teddy, as far as a cast member, and Tamra is at least a little interesting. They did set the blueprint in some kind of way. I mean, there's a lot of cast members who've done this, but they have set the blueprint to have enough relevancy in their entertaining podcast, show, that it kind of trickles back into the world of the series. So I will give them credit.
What do you think Bravo thinks of them doing their own like BravoCon, but they did the TwatCon or whatever it was?
Well, this is you were talking earlier about a host who felt like, it's always good to show up for yourself and advocate, but a host that was like at Entertainment Tonight and was like saying, I need all the money. It's all about me, 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 me. When at the end of the day, Entertainment Tonight is the brand. It will always be. I think a little bit like that too. I don't want to say you can't also do your own thing, because that would be not me supporting independent creators. But at the same time, I don't know. You just got to watch yourself with that. Even with the way you do content, you can't come on the show and do your podcast and say, well, they edited this and they did that. There's a lot of stuff that you maybe want to stay away from. So it's teach their own, I guess. I don't care about it that much.
Unless
I don't care about those two that much.
And this is my manager hat. Unless Bravo's taking a piece of all of that, because they do have an ancillary a paragraph in all of their contracts because it's the Bethany Frankel clause, because of Bethany and her her $98 million Bean deal that they didn't get a piece of, and they feel like that they were partially responsible, and they were, because she used that platform to build her skinny brand. To the public, meaning she then could promote it on that platform.
The exposure in the platform. Yes, absolutely.
So my point, and they said, hey, we get a piece of that. You know what I mean? And they didn't for Bethany, but every contract after Bethany, they put that in, that they're getting a piece. So maybe Bravo is getting a piece of all of these podcasts and laughing all the way to the bank.
You know what? You might be right. Thinking about Luann's show. The way they support Luann's show. Luann's show is fun. I want to see it for sure. There's clearly a interest in supporting Luann succeeding in this odd, delusional, making the most of a bad experience, cabaret. There's an interest. So yeah, you might be right that the Two T's in a Pod show kind of does have a little bit of that backing. You might be right about that.
What do you think about Brandy and Caroline Manzo, real quick?
Brandy, I think that Caroline, I wasn't an early Jersey fan. I thought they all picked on Danielle, to be honest with you, like that big epic scene. Not saying Danielle was a superstar, but it was a little much. And Caroline grew on me. I think I loved when she did her spinoffs or whatever. She was definitely interesting, and I love that Caroline isn't a thirsty reality star. That difference does show through on the programs. But I do think, like, if I was Brandy, and as messy as it is, the
lawsuit, like how we're not getting that season of Ultimate Girls Trip because what happened between Brandy and Caroline.
Well, obviously,
Caroline says Brandy,
had some and as much as you don't ever want to belittle that claim, I think I want to look at it more from like what Brandy has been given a job on every show. And that's when she went to go do the single show on the E! Channel or any other program she's ever done, is come in, light a fire, make some mess, make some muck, and just like, make a good television show. So I feel like it's really hard at one point to suddenly now all of a sudden create this space where like you went too far, because she may have not known that. And this is a tough one, Marki, because as a viewer, there's so many things we accept as viewers in these shows. Right. And so how do you define the line? So I want to be respectful of Caroline's feelings in this, but it really is unfortunate that that whole thing couldn't be edited out and we couldn't get the series. And I also feel like if I was casted, if I was Brandy, and I had been told, light this fire, light this fire, light this fire. Right. In fact, Brandy specifically bringing Sheena into the situation with the ex-husband was what Vanderpump started as. So Brandy must feel so, it's not like I'm making an excuse for Brandy, but I feel like Brandy must feel like shit. She must feel like absolute shit.
She must. And I think you're to speak to your point. Yeah, you hire Brandy because she's going to be the fire. You light that match and she's going to start that fire and she's going to create that drama, and she's sort of fearless with that. And then all of a sudden the line moves and now, you know what I mean? And I think that was what her lawsuit was basically like, wait a minute, like you knew what you get when you get me. So don't play like, oh, whoa, you went too far, because what's too far?
Yeah.
Right? Like, but I think it sucks for us viewers that they, like you said, couldn't edit it out or even air it with that sort of put a disclaimer at the top of every episode. We Bravo don't condone blah, 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 blah. But let us be the judge of watching it. And I think the ratings would be through the roof. So it's kind of a shame that they're not, to be perfectly honest.
Well, see, reality TV used to be fun, but it's always going to be an interesting thing for somebody who doesn't watch reality TV and looks at this genre as a very lowbrow thing. Right. For someone on the outside to look in and say, well, isn't it all a mess? Isn't it all horrible treatment? Isn't it all actions that are very, should not be celebrated? So I think that's what gets really interesting. Where Brandy probably had a problem was, I believe, in her claim, it was like, oh, and because of this, I can't get work elsewhere. When people hear that, they don't like that. People really react in a way that they're like, well, you could go work at the Piggly Wiggly restaurant, and make your money. People don't like that. And I think that was maybe something that maybe she doesn't need to push as much, but she's been pushing because of this. I can't get work nowhere else. Because when somebody's working their 9 to 5, busting their butt, they're overtime, and they're barely making ends meet, they don't want to hear, even if Brandy's right, okay, because I do like Brandy, they don't want to hear that. And I think that was a problem. That was a little bit of a problem. They're like, you go work at the Piggly Wiggly restaurant for minimum wage, and you do what not minimum wage, but you get what I'm saying. So yeah. But no, I mean, it's reality TV. Like, she was told to light it up, and she did. Right. Yeah.
And then she got, and then don't forget about Leah, who sued Bravo, Leah from Real Housewives of New York, for, saying that, like, they promoted alcohol and they promote it, well, you're sober going on the show. You were sober like 5 or 6 years. And then on season 2, you break your sobriety, that's on you, that you can't, you know what I mean? Meaning, but she claims that, like, the pressure to drink or be a certain way, but I don't know. Cause then you watch New York, they're not big drinkers. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think New York, this new cast of New York doesn't work is because there's no chemistry between any of them.
Okay. But who do you like though? And so you would never bring Leah back. Would you bring like an Ebony back in the new group, or do you bring the old school girls back, the old school ladies back into the show? What do you do?
Ebony was an alumni of Become a Host. I
don't think Ebony did that bad season 13. I think season 13 was a challenging season. I think one thing that she's always done, she's worked in the journalist space. I remember she went to go do something with Revolt Network with a podcaster, Joe Budden, who's a former rapper, very successful. One thing about Ebony, she always goes and marches to the beat of her own drum. So I think it was a huge, I understand that they had to revamp, but I think as they revamped and they're finding out that their season 2 isn't working, let Ebony come in as that voice of reason. I could not believe that more. I think she is wonderful. And I think what we got was just a very interesting time. And there was a lot of like pointing the finger at her because she was so, saying this, saying that otherwise. But I don't think it was that. I think it was a really difficult season. The season was failing regardless. Wasn't Ebony's fault. Yeah.
Right.
And now I think she just gave birth, so she's like motherhood, like that's a new journey. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of Ebony because she's a Become a Host alumni.
Okay,
so I'm a fan. Love her. I think Ebony came at just it was timing, and it wasn't the right time because of the whole, just everything, and she sort of had to be like the voice of like know. And I think that was tough and to navigate. And when you have people like Ramona and Sonia that are sort of so tone deaf to all of that, which is also what makes them, such train wrecks to watch. Right. So it's that double-edged sword, you know what I mean? Like it's such a double-edged sword. But I think,
well, maybe that's what the new cast doesn't have. They don't have their train wreck. Ramona, for what she was, she gave season after season after season of that train wreck. And if the new cast doesn't have that, maybe that's a little bit of the problem, not supporting a lot of Ramona, but you get what I'm saying.
100%. I think they're all too aware of themselves. And so when we're watching as an audience, we're just like, oh my God, you're editing yourself. You're so aware of yourself. You're so mindful of like, how do you want me to bring up Scientology? How do you want to have this conversation? It's like, wait a minute, you're editing yourself before the editors get to edit you. And it's boring and it's contrived and you think you're cool and you're fascinating and you dress hip. It's just not enough. Like, meaning it's too superficial. I want to know B and C and D story from these ladies, and we're not getting it. We're just
I'm a little nervous. I love that you say that because it's not just the A story, it's the B and the C story.
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw out a couple things I've already mentioned on my channel. Because you're in casting and you know it so well, I want to know if I'm like completely off or I'm right on point. I thought in the new cast, this was my like original thought process. You bring in like an Olivia Palermo, you bring in like an Adrienne Bailon even. Those were some of the choices that I had. And so I'm going to ask you what you think of those two, but I'm also going to ask you what you think of what I thought is, would Ebony even want to go back to Real Housewives of New York? I think this is me. I think, and I've said this on my show many times, I think she should revamp Blood, Sweat, and Heels, I think it was called. The show that had 2 seasons. It was massively big. Melissa Ford was on the first season. It was massively big the first season, and then it just fell so dramatically. What I think you do is you give Ebony the lead role in that and have her assemble a cast and kind of let her go do a show and see where it goes. I don't, because like, to be honest, like if I was Ebony, would you even want to do Real Housewives of New York? You know, to be the only cast member, I think, in history to never get a reunion. That's crazy. That's like, no, that's really challenging.
Right.
You know?
No, yeah. I agree. I think I would love to see Ebony come back in that genre in some way. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think she has a great voice and a great story, and we never got the chance to hear it, or like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think she would be more suited for this cast versus the OGs, but bring in an Olivia, bring in Adrienne, like, you know what I mean? And
remember Olivia Palermo in The City, the way she so gently,
right,
but with her eyes just like shot through you, right, with a little bit with Whitney Port on The City. Who was the gal that she worked with at when they were working for Josie? Was that the blonde was Aaron?
No, Aaron Lucas was my client who was on.
That's right. Yes, I remember you before we knew her on The City. You, I remember you would talk about Aaron quite a bit. Olivia was wonderful, but would she ever do reality? You think? Probably not, huh?
I don't know if she would ever do reality. I don't know. I mean, I think her career has. I don't know. I mean, you know, and I think that's why I think the franchise of Real Housewives, they have to be really careful the next 5 to 7 years, meaning be very mindful of the people you're putting on, because casting is such a pivotal point, and that's why they're getting, you know, finally the recognition in Emmy nominations and whatnot, because it is that we, you know, all the casting I've done, when the show's a hit, do we ever get any kudos? No. And we should. You know what I mean? Meaning we absolutely should. No, it goes right to the executive producer. They get all the kudos and not us. But casting is so key. And when I watch these shows, I'm like, you know, God, this is what's missing, or this, you need this spice, you need this sugar, you need this salt, you need this cayenne, you need, you know what I mean, to make this interesting, you know, group of ladies engage, enlighten, educate, and entertain the masses, right?
So do you think they're missing the boat when they're casting like an influencer? Like Sai plays really well as an influencer, but does Sai play really well as being compelling on the show? My first initial reaction, I was like, she's not cutting it. But I think season 2, she's learning to step into what it is. And I think Sai actually is being well-rounded, and I'm kind of into it this time.
I like Sai the best out of everybody on the whole cast. I think
exactly in the season 2 when she goes, and I saw myself on camera, and you're expected to hear, right, oh, and I wanted to make some changes or better myself, and she's like, and I thought I looked beautiful. Like Sai kind of, I think, really learned how to do this, and we need more of that. Yeah, absolutely.
100%. And I like the idea of Jenna, but I feel like Jenna's she's too guarded. She's too afraid to really like let the audience get to know her. You know what I mean? And so, you know,
I don't get rid of her though. I wouldn't get rid of her. I still keep her as a part-time, let her still add to the credibility, the fashion sensibility, 100%. the go-getter New Yorkness. That's the key of a show, is your part-timers. Your part-timers that clock in. Not that they ever want to feel left out or not making as much money or not in the credits or whatever. But to be honest, if I did a show, you know, I've got my own thing. I built my own thing. I've got 20 years experience. I mean, I would take a lead role, but you know, a lot comes with that, right? But if you could take a part-time role, get in. I mean, Marlo used to say this, like, get in, you get all the benefits of doing it, but it's not all of the attention. I think, I don't know, part-time's not exactly as bad as people think, unless you're Jackie Goldschneider from Jersey. She hated it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Jersey in a moment, but I want to finish this New York thing here. We got to tie this up. And I just need 2 sentences about when we talk about casting, because Marki would know, Marki has been casting for years, talent manager, et cetera, Marki Costello. Make sure you go check out her websites and all the work she's done over the years. I've been very luxurious that I've got to not only take the class, but I also got to work in the office. So I'm always a big supporter.
And be my friend.
And be Mama Marki.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about the great Kenya Moore in a second, and I'm going to ask you about the great Larsa Pippen in a second, and then we'll end with Jersey. Okay. But tie up right now, New York, what do? What do you ring? We're going to our consultant, Mama Marki Costello. What do you do to fix Real Housewives of New York?
I have the answer for you. You bring Luann back, honestly, to show these girls. Like you bring in Luann and maybe Dorinda. You bring in Luann and Dorinda, and you have Luann, Dorinda, Sai. You have Jenna be a friend, and you recast, like 1 or 2 other people, and that's what it needs. You need a little bit of the OG with the new G's, you know what I mean? And
now you do, because the season 1, I understood they had to do that, but now you mix. So does that mean you're not bringing Aaron back, Jessel? What are your thoughts on them? Aaron, when I did I've done it 3 times now, Watch What Happens Live as one of the virtual callers, my 3rd time, but the first time I did it was with Candy Burris and Aaron, and the season was really thriving at the beginning. Do you think Aaron doesn't come back? Like, I don't know. What's Aaron? Where is she missing?
I can't stand Jessel. Jessel just bugs me on every level. Like her and her husband.
She's cute.
I know, but she's cute, but she's just blah. I think Brynn had a good first season, but Brynn now is like, it's like when you're a rock star and you have like this amazing 1 album, and like the hardest thing is the follow-up album, right? Well, I think that's what's happening with season 2 of New York. The follow-up is just, it's crappy, and so you need a little bit of the OGs with the new Gs. Yeah. Erin has potential.
She does.
She lost me with the whole mezcal.
Why? Insensitive?
It was not insensitive. It was ridiculous. Meaning it was just like, what the fuck? Are we not being politically correct?
Okay, we're just going with it. We're flying by the seat of our pants.
On the mezcal. Lost by Aaron. You keep Sai. Jessel leaves. You keep. I love. What's her name? The other. What's the other?
We've Uba is Chanel Ayan from Dubai's cousin. Yeah.
You keep Uba and you keep Sai. You bring back Luann and Dorinda. You keep Jenna as a friend, and you cast 1 more person, and that yummy, delicious New York salad would be on fuego. And Andy Cohen, if you're hearing us, call me.
Is.
I'll help you cast it. Now,
do you like Raquel? Do you like Raquel?
I like Raquel. I mean, I like her. Here's the thing. I like everything about her so far. Like, she's very interesting, and I like the dynamic of the relationship and the art and how cool she is and the way she dresses and her mad style. I need more. I need more. And hopefully by the end of the season, we get more of Raquel. But can we just jump to Kenya, please? Because
time out. Mama Marki Costello, who I've worked with and took her classes. So we go back in very deep conversations we've had. Now, this is just reality TV, so this is just very fluffy conversations. But let me tell you somebody that I have loved from the beginning. I used to, in fact, say Real Housewives of Atlanta started season 5 when the great Kenya Moore came through. Gone with the Wind fabulous. I am a huge Kenya Moore fan. I never liked the notion, oh, you're just a has-been from the 90s. You might say you're a has-been from the 90s if you weren't around and kind of saw what Kenya was. Kenya was the culture of the time. We, like, in terms of me growing up, I was 18, 19, 20, 21 when Kenya was moving, right? And so when she came onto Atlanta, she could have been full of herself or whatever the case, but she showed up and she performed. I've always loved the great Kenya Moore hair care. So I will be happy if you also, as a casting director and as a talent manager, if you agree that she is one of the best. Now I'm going to be at the edge of my seat eating my popcorn.
I love Kenya.
If you were going to be like, if I was going to say like, okay.
I love Kenya. And it's really a travesty that they let her go over the reason they let her go, because once again, it goes back to what we said about Brandy. It's like, oh wait, so now you're moving the line again. Now, like, okay, so here the new cast member is at an event for Kenya. We all know how Kenya is, which is why she makes great reality TV. And she puts up something about this girl. I blame the producers. They know what the fuck is coming. I had a reality show. So it's like, they know what's happening. If that was going to be an issue, those producers should have stopped it before it ever got to that point. Otherwise, someone said to her, because they all have to discuss storyline and what they're doing. So for them to be like, oh my God, we didn't know, bullshit. And to hang her out to dry like that. And then say, that's what pissed me off. It was like, shame on you.
Yeah, no, you're right. You did the Drama Queen on the E channel. I've done Fuse TV, the VJ Search, as well as TLC. I did a show on there. Everybody knows what's generally happening, and it is, even if you think it was insanely a really bad move, it's hard for the cast members to be nudged along that move. And the moment it gets reacted in such a way, people sort of turn their backs on you. Now, the great thing about Kenya is she still maintains, I'm still involved. And what I mean by that with Kenya is, and I love this about Kenya, she's a superstar regardless, whether she left reality TV to go, when she was pregnant, when she came back, whether she's from the 90s, whether she's, a pageant girl, Kenya will always be. So while I think it's kind of they never gave her a spinoff, she should have a spinoff,
100%.
But nonetheless, like what I always say is, sometimes it feels like the cast members, they define so much on the success of this show. Kenya Moore is not bigger than the show. I'm not trying to say anyone's bigger than the show, but like, she don't care. She's not hung up on it. She's a star regardless. That's an internal thing. You know what I mean? You have that, Marki. You know what I mean?
I think shame on Bravo and the production company that produces Atlanta, in the sense where let's not pretend like, when all reality is produced, people, and and the producers know everything that's coming. And the fact that like they hung her out to dry was just horrific, in my opinion. It goes back to the Brandy, the Nene's, like, Nene made good TV, whether you love Nene Leakes or hated her. Nene made good TV.
You don't think she was a tad overrated?
Towards the end, yes, because Nene started to drink her own Kool-Aid and and not remembering where she came from. It's like, Nene, you can go do Ryan Murphy's sitcoms and all of the TV shit, and more power to you. But don't forget where you came from. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, but Nene made for great TV. I'm so happy Portia's coming back. I love Portia. Yeah, and I think Portia going through her divorce and all of that stuff, I really hope we get a lot of that story once again, because we know Portia, we love Portia, and what makes Portia so great is she bounces back. And that's what we have to remember. There's a part of this formula that works is because someone gets cheated on, someone goes through something devastating, but they climb themselves back, they bounce back. We love a comeback in Hollywood of any kind, because we as the viewer can relate and connect, and we want to root for you.
Yeah.
So
well, Portia makes sense, even though she gets under my skin as a cast member, she is compelling. One thing about Portia, she is the Georgia Peach. Like, that's another thing. Like, yes, it's great to have like a Cynthia come through and a Kenya. These are people I like. Right. But Portia, as much as Phaedra was, you know what I mean? Like, well, I'm not sure if Phaedra is from Georgia to begin with, but the point is, Portia is a Georgia Peach, and it is important to have her on the show. I think she does do a really good job. Absolutely. Right. Anyways, Atlanta will be interesting. We're going to end with New Jersey because we're going to have a love fest of Melissa Gorga. We are. But one person I need to mention, because when we talk about compelling, and I don't know if you're going to say that she has the A, B, C, and C storyline, but are you with me with that Larsa Pippen? Okay, Marki, are we ready to get into it?
Yes.
They always say, oh, Larsa, she was, she was, kissing ass of the Kardashians, which, by the way, I loved Larsa from season 1, her season 1 on Miami. I actually didn't really follow her on the Kardashians. And so it's always that notion of like, oh, she's just a Kardashian has been or whatever. I'm like, I don't think Larsa carries herself that way. When you're friends with her, she loves you. I think if she moves on, she moves on. So the joke that I make, Marki, is, Larsa didn't need the Kardashians needed Larsa. That's how much I like her. Yeah.
I love Larsa. If you're not watching the House of Villains on E with Larsa,
Oh my gosh.
she's stealing the show.
Yep.
I think seeing Larsa on Traitors and the House of Villains has made me fall more in love with Larsa, because I think we get to see the real Larsa outside of how they produce her for Housewives.
Exactly. So Marki's talking about Traitors, which is on the Peacock streaming. It won, I think it won Emmys or an Emmy.
Best reality show of the year.
Wonderful cast. Larsa showed up on that show. That's on Peacock streaming, and also on the E channel. There's the House of Villains second season. She came in late even, and it's like she's making such a presence.
She put Teresa up for elimination. It was so effing brilliant. I fell in love with Larsa even more when she put Teresa up, and you see Teresa's face like, wait, we're supposed to be like housewife, like,
alliance,
like buddies here, and you're not alliance. And she puts her alliance up, and she was like, well, I don't want people in the house to think we have an alliance. It was so brilliant. And then in true Larsa fashion, I loved how she went and then campaigned for Teresa to stay as much as so she was like, look, house, I'm not afraid to put her up, but look, house, she also doesn't have to leave this week.
Larsa gets that thing. I don't know who we were talking about. We've done a pretty substantial episode here. So definitely hashtag randomly with Ronnie Jr. if you want to see all the different clips that I'm talking with Marki Costello. Marki Costello, of course, hosting teacher, manager, et cetera, et cetera. I've worked for her. I've taken her class.
I'm the queen of unscripted. If it comes to unscripted, I am the queen of it. I eat, sleep, and drink it.
I'm saying, yes.
We are the randomly unscripted reality whores, Ronnie and I. So
okay. We may have to do this more once a month. We may have to tackle once a month.
We're going to do a random reality roundup once a month with Ronnie and Marki.
Absolutely. Next time with some drinks, though.
Yes.
Okay, but here's my thing with Larsa. Larsa is so good. And I think I was mentioning this earlier. Sometimes, we were talking about Heather from Dubrow from Orange County. Sometimes people's success or their big, how big they are or how big they show up, it rubs people in the wrong way. So suddenly you're looking at Larsa like, who does she think she is? She's superficial, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, she does love herself, but that's not a reflection on how she treats people, is what I've always thought about her. In some way, in that Real Housewives of Miami, it's only sort of put together in this certain formula. So you're right. Being able to see her on Traitors and being able to see her in House of Villains shows that this is who she is. She shows up and she's fun and she's witty and she's charismatic and she's assertive. I think she's
that they're not bringing back Nicole Martin, or she's not coming back.
I think for her own leaving. Yeah.
Because once again, I think her and her husband, they're like the real housewives and couple of Miami. Him being a huge lawyer, the private planes, the beautiful house, her being an anesthesiologist and having great taste. I mean, and she's not afraid to push the I think that's going to be sadly missed.
Yeah.
I love Alexia. A lot of people don't like Alexia. I love Alexia. I love her.
Me too.
She reminds me of Lucy when she's like, how do you say Carl? It's Carol. Carl, a boy? Carl? I don't like it. I love Alexia.
Also, hold on. You as a casting expert, how about people that they will stand in it and stand behind it no matter what? Alexia does two things that I think is good. Does she say some bad things? Yes, but she also does not care or pander to an audience. Right. That's number one. And if she does get jammed up, she stands behind it. Like, it's almost as if she'll go deeper into the thing. As most human beings, we're usually like, oh, you know what, Marki? You're right. Actually, I didn't think of it that way. She's not. She's it's almost like she gets defensive. She gets very defensive. Marisol, her earlier seasons, maybe because she was doing luxury PR, it was a little slower. It wasn't really moving. Mama Elsa was moving. Right. But Marisol has stepped in and knows how to do this. I like Marisol in the current seasons, and I'm so glad that Housewives of Miami is back. And
I love Miami. To me, is one of the sleeper. I think I think Miami is literally some of the most compelling reality to watch out of the franchise, out of the Housewife franchise. I think it has a great chemistry. I love Gertie. I love how Gertie, when she went through her breast cancer last season,
Yeah.
she took the audience on that journey. She wasn't afraid to show us the good, the bad, the ugly. That's what made that's the A, B, and C story.
And you're right about that, because this is Gertie's third season, I think it was.
Yes.
All three of her seasons, you got something completely different. That's what you were
100%.
alluding to earlier. You were saying that.
They better show Alexia's divorce from Todd, meaning, because once again, we got to see that Alexia, you say you were blindsided that you moved into a new apartment and then all of a sudden he didn't want to be with you, like, meaning that has more needs to be revealed, and hopefully they cover that on the season, because why last season was so compelling. We had Lisa and Lenny that pig, and Lisa going through the divorce and the custody and the kids and the money, and we had Larsa and Michael Jordan's son. We
Marcus.
had, there was just it was just so good. So it's going to be interesting without Dr. Nicole Martin. It's going to be interesting to see what storylines and what they're sharing this season, especially Alexia with Todd and the divorce.
Does Adriana get under your skin?
Yes, I love her sometimes and I hate her sometimes.
You know what I love about her is, like, when she was giggling with Emilio,
right?
From the great Gloria Estefan, right? And she's giggling, she's telling her friends, and this is that kind of, we talked about it a bit ago with New York, like Luann's delusion. That is the key to this, to be compelling. And so Adriana, and this is after she said so many vile things throughout the season, but when it's her time, she's happy and she's on fire. It's wonderful. But she goes to the group and she says, hey ladies, I was in the studio with Emilio, and there was this song and they were going to give it to Camila Cabello, but they gave it to me. And I was like, Adriana, sweet heart. There is no world that Camila Cabello is like, we'll get to Camila later. We've got Adriana. And that is what I love when I watch these shows. It's that certain escapism that you need. You know what I mean?
Brilliance.
That's casting thing with Miami, because I think it's such a good franchise. You could go back to watch season 1. Season 2 was one of the best, and then it's been delivering each and every season.
Right.
Casting thing, not necessarily Housewives of Miami. Kiki Barth, and it's funny because I don't want to do reboots because that gets a little tiring, but Kiki Barth should be House of Style host if they ever rebooted a show like that. I don't think that would be an MTV show now. I think it'd be more like a Bravo or an E show, but make Kiki Barth be because it was Cindy Crawford, Daisy Fuentes, Kiki Barth as a new version of a House of Style. That is my casting opinion.
Right. All right, Ronnie, I've got to make dinner, so let's go to New Jersey before. And I want to say one other thing. What do you think about the gossip about the girls that were doing the new Bravo dating show with Shannon, Countess Luann, what's her name from Potomac, Ashley,
Giselle and Ashley,
and Giselle. And, and how the host came out and said that Shannon was awful and terrible to the crew. Now, Giselle has come out since then and saying, like, she never saw that, you know what I mean? And I really feel like it was wrong of the host to say anything. Because once again, when you shoot a reality show before it airs, you're really not supposed to talk about anything that happens. So for him to have come out so blatantly right after they finished, like they were in the airport leaving the island they were on to come back home after shooting, and the host then said all of this crap about Shannon, which I can't believe but he since retracted and apologized.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
The network probably
I like the concept. You asked the concept. I love the concept. These are some of your top tier reality stars of the network. We're in a time that you got to just crank out more content for either Peacock streaming or the network itself, Bravo. So this is a great, mix and match. You've lost the girls trip, I guess. It seems like that's fully on pause. So you want to do something that's similar. Also, it gives possibility to birth this new element of a genre, which would be the suitors. Like Bravo reality has a ton of really wonderful, compelling female cast members. There's not as many of the male cast members, and if they are, they're usually on like the younger shows, like the Martha's Vineyard or some Southern Charm or Vanderpump Rules. So to get like a I guess you would say like a thirsty, like a Mike Hill maybe, who used to date Cynthia, to get like a Mike Hill, been around, super successful, but like still plays good reality TV. That's what I think you run the risk in a good way of having with this. You're going to have these really wonderfully vibrant suitors. You're going to have people that are like Todd, who dated Alexia. You're going to have guys like Louis, who's married to Teresa. So I think that's good. As for the host, I don't know. For some reason, I just was very indifferent with it. I didn't think it was a problem. I also would not have ever done that. Even if that is part of the story, I'm waiting for press to do that as we're rolling out the show. That is giving too much too fast. Even if you hated her, why did you put that on the social media while it's still in production? Those are the kind of things that could go from a green light of a show to like taking the show not forward. Nah, not necessarily, but you get what I'm saying. It just was too much too soon. But did it bother me? No, I think it actually added more of an allure. Is Shannon Beador a problem? So now you're watching, kind of seeing their interaction. Either I'm just really like Joel Kim Booster. He had the Fire Island movie. He's been a great comedian. Maybe I'm just like in support of his work anyway. It didn't bother me whatsoever.
Maybe you just have the old adage of, PR, good PR, bad PR is just good for the show. So maybe it will be brilliant for the show. Maybe
well, and also it's casted well. Like look at who we're talking about: Luann, Shannon, Giselle, Ashley. I don't know who else is there. Like I'm already in. So yeah, I'm gonna also look a little deeper. Like, ooh, did he talk to her? Did she look like she was having an attitude? You don't know. We're powering through because we've had a great time here with you. Last thoughts, the biggest conversation with Real Housewives of New Jersey. We're not going to like do it to date per se. We're going to keep this nice and evergreen. What are your favorites in the contribution of what New Jersey's Teresa has brought to the show and what Melissa has brought to the show? And who do you happen to favor with?
I favor 100% Melissa and Joe Gorga. I love the Gorgas. Yes. I love everything about them. I think Melissa is, once again, I think Melissa is sort of the anchor. If you really want to know the truth, I feel like she's the anchor. I think Teresa got extremely jealous when Melissa and Joe came on the show way back when. I think Teresa's very jealous that they have a great marriage, and she has like gone through divorce and her husband lied, and I mean, they've gone to jail. Like the fact that like she doubles and triples down on her hatred, and like it just shows such an ugly side to Teresa. But if she could have a full come to Jesus and forgiveness, oh my God, I think the show would be so amazing with both of them if they could just forgive, because they would have their natural little things anyways, but they wouldn't have that. It's uncomfortable to watch family members hate each other that much, because when we watch reality, it's escapism, and we all can fight with family members, right? So we don't want to see that kind of, it just cuts too deep, and it just became too redundant and boring, that storyline. It was good for 1 or 2 seasons, but it got so out of control. So if they could have come full circle, and Teresa could have really swallowed all of her bullshit pride and said, "You're my little brother, I love you," like meaning and I don't ever want to fight again. Like if that could have been a real moment, I think it could have really saved the series. You know what I mean? But now there's such a great divide. Like I love the Patterson girls that they're Patterson,
Dolores,
and Dolores. They come from Patterson, New Jersey, which a statue of Lou Costello in Patterson, New Jersey. My grandfather came from Sicily with his family in Patterson, New Jersey. I love my Patterson girls, but Teresa, snap the fuck out of it. You're not bigger than the show.
Hey, all right. So listen, you are right about a lot of that. The rest is still unwritten, and I personally like Melissa Gorga. Marki, thank you for lending all of your wonderful casting and talent management. Yes, this was a lot of fun.
I think we should do a monthly random reality roundup with Marki and Ronnie. Let's do it. I love you. Keep it real as always when it comes to random and reality, and we will talk soon. I love you.
All right. I'll see you, Marki.
Okay.
Bye.
Hey, Ronnie Jr.